What if I told you that a single history book may be unintentionally responsible for some of the greatest works and biggest blunders in world archaeology? To properly understand the world, there is no substitute for getting out and experiencing places firsthand. The feel of cold stone against your hand, the hustle and bustle of ancient cities, and the views, they all just make it so good to be out and about. And for people like us, it's a wonder how anyone can go about their week without visiting something historic.
You can see that. That's pretty obvious. It's a cut mark, and around it there's a ring. It's in the absolute middle of nowhere.
It feels like common sense, doesn't it? The idea that to really get a place, you need to actually go there. We naturally put more stock in what someone says if they've walked the ground themselves and seen the landscape in the flesh. But, believe it or not, this now deeply ingrained idea, espoused from England to Timbuktu, first gained widespread appeal following one influential but now quite controversial book. It is a topic with a surprising amount of heated debate around it, and today I will be placing one foot firmly into the so-called Archaeology War.
At that time.
Often argued to be a transitional stage.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Step Pyramid, I'm sure?
No.
Right, and you've been to Giza though?
No, I've never been to Giza.
Oh dear.
So join me in this little video where I will quickly critique the controversial muddy boots argument. The year was 1955, and economic historian W.G. Hoskins published his book, The Making of the English Landscape. The contents of this book would forever influence the way history was discussed in the Western world, and give Hoskins the nickname, the father of landscape history. While Hoskins was not necessarily an innovator of ideas, his book was certainly a popularizer, smushing together and promoting several ideas that are now commonplace. Firstly, Hoskins had a strong dislike for London, which led to his appreciation for the countryside, an opinion that anyone familiar with modern London can get behind. This meant that his ideas around history did not often involve the big stories about kings, queens or wars. They were instead grounded in what we now call historical reconstruction, the idea of imagining what life was like back in history. Secondly, Hoskins had a love for the Lake District poet William Wordsworth, father of the Romantic art movement. Wordsworth promoted the power of wandering lonely as a cloud to gain common sense in a reflection.
I wander lonely as a cloud that floats so valen hills. When at once I spotted a host of golden daffodils.
This common sense approach involved making notes on one's surroundings and musing on anecdotes about historical sites.
That right there is what's known as the Urra Moor Dyke. Now I'm going to have to channel my inner Paul Whitewick here and say, can you see this? I actually think it's really obvious because they've grown something a little bit brighter on there. Now the romantic in me wants to say, what an amazing place to live. The people of the Iron Age, the Celts in their kingdoms, who would have been up here and who would have been looking down on this absolutely stunning valley to that little opening there. We can speculate that the Brigantes, one of the big confederations of Celtic tribes here in northern England, they were charging through that big valley and they were trying to incorporate or subjugate this tribe on this hill, all based on this fantastic landscape. You can just envision it, can't you?
A style of study that even the antiquarians may have called overly poetic. Thirdly, Hoskins was influenced by early aerial archaeologist O.G.S. Crawford. From Crawford, Hoskins borrowed a defining concept, the idea that the landscape was a palimpsest, a kind of layered document whose unique patterns could reveal its development over time. In tandem with the other two ideas, this could be used to reconstruct the ancient landscape. For Hoskins to read these palimpsests required direct engagement with the land itself, a merging of romantic reflection and personal anecdotes, with, quote, common sense history. It meant walking the fields, noting down details, and, literally, getting one's boots muddy. Hoskins championed on-site observation, using it to build narratives often focused on the lives of ordinary people, rather than the, at the time popular, focus on major historical events in large cities. If this all sounds very obvious and familiar to you, is because almost all English historians have absorbed some of Hoskins' common sense philosophy over the last 70 years. From Michael Wood to Alice Roberts, every anorak on these Green Isles has at least a little bit of W.G. Hoskins in them, and by extension, the Romantic poet William Wordsworth. It is what Matthew Johnson called the English landscape tradition, but we will get on to that later. Hoskins' influence is undeniable. It even reaches YouTube. See favourite of the channel WC21, who on top of intensive research, makes it his mission to go everywhere he mentions. The absolute bloody legend. Likewise, the fantastic Paul Whitewick, of course, proves his muddy boots credentials by being constantly out of breath in a field somewhere.
Now, William astutely suggested that this lesser camp, well, it was enlarged by the Romans, he said.
Which, more than anything, makes me jealous of those Wiltshire landscapes.
Right now, I'm stood in a ditch and there is a big wall next to me.
Even my horrendously windswept head, appearing every now and then, is there to show that, yes, I did actually go to the place I'm talking about.
Hello everybody, are you ready to see my windswept hair? I came prepared with a hat. Look at this. You ever seen hair that bad?
In essence, Hoskins' book is, I would argue, still an absolutely fantastic read, reminding us that not only is exploring sites the right thing to do, it's actually the only way we can claim to properly know about a place. With the right amount of research behind you, the landscape can be an amazing thing to read. That said, however,
At that time.
Often argued to be a transitional stage.
Yeah,
Have you been
yeah.
to the Step Pyramid, I'm sure?
No.
Right, and you've been to Giza, though?
No, I've never been to Giza.
Oh dear. Well, they do make a very different impact. I mean, I've climbed the Great Pyramid 5 times, and I mean, you're dealing with something orders of magnitude different in terms of what's required. I mean,
this clip shows Graham Hancock, a wildly popular alt historian who explores the out-there idea of a lost Ice Age civilization.
But to say that enough work has been done to rule out the possibility of a lost civilization seems to me absurd when we're dealing with 27 million square kilometres. And I just want to say that I and my wife Santha have done a great deal of diving.
i.e. Atlantis. Importantly, he's also a fellow Englishman. Here he is using what I like to call the muddy boots argument. The idea that having visited a place and walked around it long enough to get your boots muddy somehow allows you to disregard past research, relying instead on a common sense visual appraisal.
And the disproportionate size of the head of the Sphinx in relation to the whole body of the Sphinx.
I mean, if you look at other ancient Egyptian sphinxes, they also have small heads. If you put my head on a lion, it would look small.
Thinking that a well-trodden landscape is one well understood.
The muddy boots argument is like stepping in some fresh goat sniffing it, and then thinking you know more about goats than actual goat herds. It's like dressing up like Indiana Jones to promote your Netflix show that bashes archaeologists. It's just total goat
We can all attest to living near something for years, only to read about it and go, oh, I had no idea it was that interesting. Or, oh, I had no idea it was that boring. You'd be surprised how many people don't know that their local medieval church is actually a Victorian rebuild, or how that random farm over there is actually a rare 800-year-old architectural masterpiece.
Believe it or not, that's the roof of a 700-year-old farmhouse from the Tudor period. Henry VIII could have stayed there. And look, people just drive past the thing.
Put simply, research and context do absolutely matter. I can't tell you how many sites I visited while writing my books that upon research turned out to be far more interesting than I first assumed. Levens Park, Rinken in Cumbria comes to mind, as it later turned out to house one of Britain's oldest plague victims from the Bronze Age, and Pudding Pie Hill in Yorkshire, a seemingly boring though massive mound, was reused by the Anglo-Saxons and once had an enormous earthwork ring around it. All things that a simple site visit can't possibly tell you, but while Graham Hancock and his lost civilization of the Ice Age are easy targets to pick on, the origins of muddy boots criticism are actually grounded in academia. Yes, this video was actually inspired by this 2007 book by Matthew Johnson, Ideas of Landscape, a book I can't recommend enough. Within his book, Johnson made a number of controversial critiques about modern archaeology, but one immediately jumps to mind: the idea that archaeology is underpinned by romanticism, blaming Hoskins' absorption of Wordsworth for embedding it so deeply in the field. I'm not sure how true this is, and there was a lot of heated debate at the time of the book's publication. But reading his book, I instantly recalled that Graham Hancock clip. Thinkers like Hancock wander around these ruinous sites, poeticising about their awe-inspiring aesthetics, the ravages of time, and, in essence, the sublime. The sublime was a concept popularised by the Romantics, like Wordsworth. It refers to that feeling of awe, sometimes tinged with terror, inspired by the experiences of immense power, scale, or antiquity. Dramatic landscapes, powerful storms, or, crucially, in the case of this video, mysterious ancient ruins. It's where neoclassical architecture comes from, and famous paintings like this. It's essentially the same feeling that later inspired the work of H.P. Lovecraft, whose work seems to have been gobbled up by the Atlantis crowd. While the sublime helps spark interest, it is easy to become obsessed with it, and getting caught up in the wow factor of a site can often lead people to prioritise their feelings over genuine evidence. This is possibly the biggest problem with the muddy boots approach, as experiencing a rush of emotions at a site can naturally lead us to feel an attachment to it. The feeling of, I've been there, I had a response to it which you can't possibly understand. It is, of course, a mistake. So, where does this leave us with W.G. Hoskins' muddy boots? Well, it's clear that his emphasis on getting out there, on experiencing the landscape firsthand, has left a positive, lasting impression that we still feel today. It's unknowingly popularised how many of us approach history and archaeology, arguably for the better. That visceral connection you get from standing within ancient walls or tracing the bumps of forgotten earthworks can often spark questions that hours in the library might completely miss. And that's because history should not be confined to the words on a page. It happened in real places and was lived by real people. But, as we have seen, there is a catch. This muddy boots sensibility, perhaps more deeply rooted in romantic ideas of the sublime than we often like to admit, carries a risk. The awe inspired by the ancient and ruinous starts to outweigh or even replace rigorous research and critical thinking with evidence. We literally tread onto shaky ground. Or is that literal? It's usually solid ground, but the theory gets shaky. It's the difference between using fieldwork to inform and using it to justify thought-up notions. Ultimately, the landscape is a palimpsest, as Hoskins suggested, but it is one written in a complex language that requires more than just intuition to decipher. Getting your boots muddy is, I would still argue, essential, a vital part of the process. But it needs to be done in tandem with the hard graft of research. I have been Adam Morgan Ibbotson. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. I know it's a bit out there for me. I want to thank Flint Dibble for his help on this. And I want to just invite you all to think critically. A lot of the bunk you see online really is just, I've seen a thing, it looked impressive. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do like, please do subscribe. And I'll meet you all in the next one. Thank you so much. We're almost at 20,000 subscribers. How crazy is that? I love you all so much. Goodbye.